Welcome to the Numerology and the Astrology for January 17th, 2021. If you add all those numbers together, you get the number 14, and if you add the 1 and the 4 together, you get the number 5. The number 5 is the number of the physical body, health, nutrition, well-being, grounding, stability, all the things that are related to being here on this earth. So it's related to the Earth Mother, nature, all the beautiful things that happen in the physical world. So, many things need to be handled today. It is going to be all about cleaning, clearing, logistics, and getting to the practical side of life. The obvious needs to be handled and handled now. There's no time to waste. The momentum is right here, right now, so catch that wave and things will go much more smoothly. The level of detail required is right there. Avoidance is not possible. Sometimes you have to do what is required on all levels. Surrender into the process and you will have it complete quickly. The Astrology Today. On Sunday, Jupiter in Aquarius will square to Uranus and Taurus. The bigness of Jupiter combined with the innovative ideas and altruistic predilections of Uranus challenge both to create a new way to work in the mundane world. The question will be if they can manage to work in the world as it is now. Expect some to take this and become agitated, rebellious, and out of sorts. Those that seek the freedoms that they think they have been denied can lead to deadly choices. Mindlessness can take over, and when that happens, things get peculiar and dangerous. Travel is not advised. Choices will all cause immediate responsibility and forms of karmic reciprocity. Chaos and questionable choices can be the result of impulsiveness and wanting to lead even at any cost. Absolute thinking should be put on the table and to the side. The moon is in the emotional sign of Pisces and all feelings seem heightened and agitation is a very uncomfortable feeling today. The moon aligns with Neptune and the sun in such a way that you will seem more aware and open to psychic impressions. Expect dreams to be interesting and profound. My quote for today. Life is short, life is sweet, life is more than sums on a balance sheet. Life reminds us that time is sometimes short. Life is insistent and rules its own superior court. Whether history records the truth or not, karma keeps tally of all battles fought. Karma knows your heart and intent. Karma knows if your soul was true or bent. Humanity can always be fooled. Hearts and minds need the discipline to be cooled. We have to have a moment of peace. To do that, we must allow hostilities to cease. Okay, and my blog for today. Just before Christmas, my uncle's partner of 30 years plus died from complications from a heart attack, heart surgery, then discovering that he had colon cancer and the body just quitting after 70 plus years of an amazing life. Yesterday, I got a phone call that my uncle had also passed. Not surprising, really. The two of them were tied at the hip, and I knew my uncle would not be sticking around without his life partner. I knew it would be fast, but it was even faster than I anticipated. My uncle had not been well for over a decade. He'd had a cardiac stroke 10 years ago, and that means that the heart failure was so strong that his organs started to die because the heart was in such bad shape. But he survived and had 60% heart function. Then his heart valve started to fail, and about 2 months ago he had heart valve replacement surgery. While the surgery was successful, partially, now his heart was beating so hard that it was ballooning his aorta, and the surgeon wanted to go back in and make the valve tighter so the blood flow would be less. Clearly, that did not happen in enough time. But in truth, I'm sure he died of a broken heart. Without his partner, life in a pandemic must have seemed of little value. So now, I am off to go help with everything on a legal level. I am one of the co-executors of this trust, and I have to get going on cleaning everything out and getting all the proper paperwork in order, schedule a cremation, and at a very busy time for mortuaries, and then notify everyone accordingly. I celebrate 2 brave souls today that traveled the world and lived a wild and crazy life. I celebrate an uncle that in 1964 went down the Amazon for 3 weeks in a time when such things were not a tourist attraction. I celebrate an uncle that loved ballet and the arts as much as I. I celebrate a person who had a unique and amazing life. Now they are together again, and I am sure they will return to be together in another time and place. In the meantime, life goes on, and those of us that can will remember the many stories and eccentricities of those whose lives were filled with special moments and fantastic memories. So I wanted to tell one of my favorite stories about my uncle. So my uncle created the very first Baby Gap store in Russia when Russia started to open up, and it was because my uncle spoke Russian, and he spoke Russian very, very well. It was one of his studies that he was in college, and he was an expert at it completely. He could have been a professor of Russian. And so because he knew so many Russian people and had Russian friends, he was able to navigate the complicated political system in Russia at that time to be able to create a store that was a Baby Gap, and to bring the Gap actually to Russia at that particular time. So he would be going back and forth between America and Russia, and during that time, if you remember that time period when Russia was opening up, it was the food lines and the bread lines, and it was really hard. So he would go over there, and he would bring clothing for the ladies that were working in the store, and we would go, he and I together would go to Nordstrom's, and we would buy 50 suits, like beautiful wool suits with beautiful shirts underneath, and it was very warm because the store was next to the windows in a mall in Russia, and so they needed to be warm, and so we got these beautiful, very high-end suits, and I remember that when we started ordering them, the person at Nordstrom's kind of looked at us like we must be crazy people or something, and she turned to me and she said, "Is your uncle for real?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, this is not a joke. You're about to get the biggest commission you've ever had. So we're going to be doing 50 suits with 50 shirts, with 50 belts, with 50 pairs of shoes, with pins for Christmas, and this is going to be a huge thing, right?" Because what my uncle never did was anything halfway. That was for sure. And so then one of those trips to Russia, he was literally standing in a bread line, and behind him were two old ladies that were also in the bread line, and he stood in the freezing cold in Russia in the winter for 3.5 hours waiting for the bread that was coming out of this bakery. And he got there, and he got the very last loaf of bread, and the old ladies behind him started to sob and cry because they had been standing also in the line, and they were more desperate than he was. And he turned around and he broke the bread in half, and he gave them each half of the bread. Another story that I have of Philip is that he was returning from Russia, and he would, because he would be gone, he would lose like 40 pounds when he was in Russia because there was no food, there was nothing to eat, and so he would, go to Russia, lose all this weight, and then he would stop over, fly back, and he would stop over in Frankfurt, and he would stay at this hotel that he really loved, and it had a huge buffet, and he would eat to his heart's content, and then he would the next day get on a plane and come back to America, and he would also get a bath because actually the hotels in Russia were also having trouble with hot water at that particular time, and so he had not had a bath sometimes for weeks at a time. So he gets to this hotel, and he gets to the front desk, and the front desk says, "Oh, Mr. Wagner, we are so sorry, but we are having plumbing problems, and the plumbing is out, and the water to all the rooms is out, and so we have put bottles of water in your room, and the buffet is on us, and but there's no water to have a bath, but you can have a sponge bath with the bottles of water, and if you need any more, please just let us know." And so Philip was like, "Oh, great, it's like I still don't get a bath, right?" So he goes upstairs, drops off his suitcases, does a quick sponge bath, and goes down to eat at the buffet, and he goes in, and obviously, this hotel has no water, so there is nobody in the hotel, and there's an old man that is sitting in a dusty suit with suitcases that are belted together, and that are all scratched and old, and this man is sitting there in this room with all this food, and he's not eating anything. And so my uncle, being my gregarious, outgoing uncle, goes up to him and tries to speak to him in German, and that doesn't work. He tries to speak to him in English. That doesn't work. He tries to speak to him in French. That doesn't work. And so then he tries Russian. And all of a sudden, this guy responds and starts speaking back in broken sort of Russian, but Russian. And he finds out that this gentleman is from Bosnia. And he is the last surviving member of his family from the war that was happening in Bosnia at the time. And he had sold everything he owned, and he had bought a plane ticket to Argentina because he had one part of his family that was living in Argentina. And he was going to get on a plane in 2 days, but he was out of money, and he hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the hotel was nice enough to let him stay in the hotel, even though he didn't have a room, but just stay in the hotel and sleep on the floor, because they felt so bad for him. And immediately my uncle was like, okay, well, first things first, let's get you some food. And so he brings him over and he said, let him have anything he wants. He can eat as much as he wants. And so they're sitting there eating, this food. And, Philip, because he had traveled so much, he said, do you have a visa to get into Argentina? If you're Russian or Bosnian, you're going to need a visa to get into Argentina once you get there. And the guy freaked out. He was like, I don't have a visa. I could barely get out of the country, much less get to an embassy and get a visa. So my Uncle Philip, being the determined Uncle Philip that he is, he basically went and went to the front desk, and he called Lufthansa, explained the situation, said that this guy needed a visa, and they told him it was impossible, that he couldn't get a visa because it was right at Christmas time, and that this guy's plane ticket was like in 7 days after Christmas. And he said, we need to get this guy's plane ticket. He needs to be in Argentina for Christmas. And they were just like, Mr. Wagner, it's Christmas. Like, we have no seats. We have no seats whatsoever. And he was like, that's not good enough. We can do better than this. There has to be a way, that's my uncle. And so he goes and talks to the embassy in Bonn, and then he goes and back and talks to the embassy in Germany, and figures out that he can get this visa, but one of the stewardesses is going to have to take this guy's passport and take it to Bonn from Frankfurt. So he calls Lufthansa and says, I need a volunteer to take this visa from the Frankfurt airport to Bonn, whoever's flying, and then take it into the embassy and actually get it stamped so that this guy can get on a plane. And so that he managed to fiddle with that, and then he kept saying, this guy needs a seat on a plane. And so finally they get this guy a first class seat on a plane Christmas Day. So not before Christmas, but Christmas Day. And so my uncle writes everything out in English, French, and German, and hands the guy $1,000, which to this guy from Bosnia was like $50,000. If you came from Bosnia and you had nothing. So he gave him $1,000, and he said, "You're going to need some money to start over there." Made sure that his family was notified in Argentina that he would be arriving, and basically got him a hotel room, got him to have a bath, got him fresh clothes, clean clothes, got everything in his suitcases washed by the hotel staff, and then gets him to the airport, and they find out that once again the seat might not be there. And and my uncle says, okay, one way or the other, he gave him this. He literally put a safety pin and put all of this information of who this guy was and what he was doing and where he was supposed to be in 3 languages on his chest. And he said, don't lose this, don't lose this no matter what. And then the stewardess was really, really nice, and the front desk at Lufthansa was really nice, and they said, look, Mr. Wagner, we will get him there. We will get him there. We will get him on a plane. One way or the other, we're going to get him on the plane, and you don't have to worry. And if something happens and he can't get on the plane, the stewardess said, she goes, I will take him home with me. She was like, I will take him to my house and I will put him on my sofa. And so Philip was like, okay, because I have to get on a plane and go to America. So my uncle gets on the plane, and they get up to 33,000 feet. And they say, well, Mr. Wagner, please press the call button. And Philip thinks, oh, God, like something's happened with the guy, right? And so he presses the call button. And the staff comes down with a bottle of champagne. And the person on the intercom says, we want to introduce you to Mr. Philip Wagner. And this is what he's done for Christmas for somebody. And then they tell the whole story. And the whole, plane applauds, and, he's like offering champagne to everybody like that. And, I love that story because what I loved about Philip was his relentlessness. What I loved about Philip was his ability to speak multiple languages and to communicate with people no matter what the situation or no matter what the circumstance. No matter what, I love his generosity of spirit and his genuine caring for people. And he always recognized that he had more than most people, and that when you have more, you should share and you should give back in many different ways. So that's a little bit of a story about my Uncle Philip, and thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you guys have a great day.